If you're feeling burned out, anxious, and having trouble sleeping, you might have what Dr. Romie Mushtaq describes as a busy brain. She's the author of The Busy Brain Cure, the 8-week plan to find focus, tame anxiety, and sleep again. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and this is Some Books Considered. And today, I'll talk with Dr. Romie Mushtaq about The Busy Brain Cure. Dr. Romie Mushtaq is a board-certified physician, award-winning wellness speaker, and founder of brainSHIFT at Work. She brings together over 20 years of experience and research in neurology, integrative medicine, and mindfulness. She's on a mission to transform mental health and wellness in the workplace, and she currently works with Fortune 500 companies, professional athletes, and global associations. And she joins us to talk about the Busy Brain Cure. Dr. Romie, welcome to Some Books Considered.
Thank you, Dan, for having me, and for your listeners for taking the time to hear something that I'm so passionate about, healing in today's world.
Well, before we talk specifically about the book, tell us a bit more about how you became interested in this area and why you wanted to write this book.
Dan, if I had to have an authentic conversation with you and your listeners, on the outside, it looked to everybody that I was doing everything right. Not only was I a brain doctor at a time where less than 5% of the neurologists in America were women, I was doing cutting edge research. I was checking all the boxes, but I was personally suffering. Back then, we didn't have candid conversations like we do today about mental health and burnout in the workplace. And I kept pushing. And I learned the hard way that chronic stress can lead to disease and that chronic stress can kill you. And it almost killed me. And I should have known better. I'm a doctor. And in that place, when I was recovering from having life-saving surgery, I had this humble moment learning that nothing I had learned in medical school is going to help me now. What do I do? And it set me on this journey that to find a solution. And somewhere along the way, I had this aha moment of, oh my goodness, there's a better way to treat our brain and mental health patients. I don't want anyone else who's out there in that dark place feeling lonely, thinking, Dan, I'm burned out. Dr. Romie's burned out. You're burned out. We all are. What can we do? I still got to go to work and pay a mortgage and take care of my kids. I want to give a tangible solution. And I want you to know that you're not alone.
Well, before we talk about some of the solutions you offer in the book, give us a brief overview here. What are people going to find?
Yeah. I actually dig in and ask people, let's go beyond talking about, are you stressed or burned out? I start by sharing my story and a concept that I call the busy brain. This idea that in today's modern post-pandemic world, stress has rewired our brains. And eating berries and breathing is no longer helping us. So I ask, do you have difficulty getting to work or school in the morning because you need caffeine before your personality shows up? Or maybe the caffeine failed you and you're having 3-4 energy drinks or even prescription Ritalin or Adderall for the doctor. And you get to work and you can't focus. In fact, you're having a hard time focusing on this interview that you're listening to right now. And you're distracted by the ding of your cell phone and your emails. And then you go home and you're like, I need to take the edge off. And you can't calm down and forget work. You're anxious. So you're like, let me have a glass of wine or 3. And then you're like, wait, I heard Dan and Dr. Romie today. I'm going to stand on self-care. I am going to go to sleep tonight. And you put your head down and there's 72 warring conversations that are robbing you of the ability to fall asleep. That's where I come in. In traditional medical terms, Dan, I say this, is that I coined the term busy brain for a triad of symptoms of anxiety, adult onset attention deficit disorder, and insomnia. These are all 3 symptoms of one disease. And the way we treat it in the West, we're actually killing ourselves. We're on stimulants all day and we need sedatives like alcohol or sleeping pills at night. And that's what the traditional medical system is doing to us. And there's a better way out.
So you talk in the book about getting trapped in that cycle that you just described. So how do we break that cycle?
Yeah. It is, I think self-awareness is the first step. and not self shame. And we actually, I'm very practical. I'm a brain doctor. We used a neuropsychology test that we labeled the busy brain test. And you take the test, and it in 4 minutes asks you 20 simple questions, and you get a brain score. We researched this test in 17,000 people who, were coming through our programs. And we found that if you score above a 30, you're starting to have signs of neuroinflammation in the brain that can lead to a busy brain. And above a 40, you have these symptoms. So the first step is to get your score. The best part of this is I research not only what's happening in their brain, but a solution. And so there's an 8-week, 8-step program. And after you take the busy brain test, the next step, Dan, in week 2 or chapter 11 of the book is the 7-day sleep challenge. We want to restore the circadian rhythm in the brain. So people can download, online or from the book, they get a step-by-step of what to do to reset their sleep-wake cycle, to bring that score down into normal range below 30.
Well, I want to talk more about some of the solutions you offer, but I want to talk about kind of how we got here, because a lot of people are probably listening and saying, but the world is a busy place, and I have to be constantly on the go to try to keep up. There are a lot of pressures at home, at work, etc. So, how did I get here? And how do I still deal with all those things, but not have the busy brain syndrome that you talk about?
Dan, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I opened the book saying this book was written for success-driven professionals like you and I and everyone listening. You don't have a luxury of a 4-hour work week. And I understand that. What happens when we have a busy brain and that pattern of neuroinflammation, everything feels like a code red emergency in our brain. The latest news headlines, an email from your boss, a text message from your children's school. When a true emergency is someone's health that may be at risk or harm, or the building is on fire, right? But the brain can't decode it. And that's why we're in this chronic state of stress and a busy brain. And so what this does is it helps you to focus within your own brain and your own body and put simple little micro habits into place that aren't going to interrupt your busy day, so that all the world that's going around you doesn't feel like a code red high alert. And you're able to actually delineate, what is the most important thing I need to do in this moment? What doesn't need my focus right now? I'm not going to waste 92 minutes scrolling on social media to numb my mind and try to calm down. What we find is when people do this, they don't feel, despite all that's going on in the world, that their brain is being hijacked by the 24-hour news cycle.
Now, and you also point out a lot of things we try to do don't work, because we're treating the symptoms, but we're not getting to the root cause. So let's talk a bit more about the root cause of burnout and insomnia and all the other things you've addressed here.
Yeah. In the pre-pandemic world, workplaces were starting to implement solutions like, let's take an emotional resilience class or a meditation class or a nutrition class. That may alleviate stress in the short term. Going on a diet, in our book, we actually show the data will actually cause you more stress and a busier brain. We looked at the root cause of what actually happens when there's this pattern of neuroinflammation causing a busy brain, and it disrupts the circadian rhythm of the brain and the hypothalamus. So there are 5 root things that we need to treat. One is sleep. That is the brainSHIFT protocol. The S is for sleep, circadian rhythm. H is looking at hormones, specifically thyroid. When we're chronically stressed and burned out in men and women, thyroid abnormalities occur and they get missed by the primary care doctor. We have the right labs for you to check. I is markers of inflammation, specifically your vitamin D3 levels and what your fasting blood sugar is doing. F is how you use food to fuel yourself without going on a diet. So we want people to live their lives. And T is the role of technology, so that we're not robbing ourselves of sleep because of all the stimulation and the blue lights from technology. And those were the key root causes that we figured out in the book. If you can fix those one by one, and not everybody has all 5 of those to fix, you're actually healing the symptoms of burnout and chronic stress, which is so important. And in 8 weeks, you're feeling better. and able to go back to living that productive life and feeling calm and focused and in control of your schedule instead of your schedule controlling you.
I want to come back to sleep, which you mentioned
Yeah.
before, and a 7-day way to fix your circadian rhythms. Describe that for us in more detail.
This research was based on the cognitive behavioral therapy of insomnia, and a couple of natural supplements that we have found in clinical research are very effective. The idea is your circadian rhythm is governs everything in your body, of especially your sleep wake cycle. And for most of us with chronic stress, that can get sent awry. So we want you to, best of your ability, commit 7 to 10 days to set a regular time to sleep, a regular time to wake up. In addition, in weeks 2 and 3 and 4 of the protocol, we give you instructions on how to get all that racing thoughts out of your brain. It's like a cloud storage service space. You know, when your computer says out of memory, that's what your brain feels like at night. We teach you how to do an effective cognitive behavioral therapy exercise that I call a brain dump, how to just make lists to release that from your brain. And also the importance of digital detox and shutting down devices from 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. These simple actions, building upon themselves 1 week after the next, can actually completely restore the sleep wake cycle, even if you have to wake up from time to time in the middle of the night because you have a young child at home or a senior dog like I do.
Another area you've talked about is diet, and diet is different from dieting.
Yes.
So what advice do you have about diet and how the food we consume can help us quiet that busy brain?
Yeah. You know, diet is a 4-letter curse word in my book and in our culture. This comes from 2 reasons. Is most of the health and wellness advice given here in the United States is based on foods that is not inclusive to all cultures. Think about the most important foods that have created joyful memories in your life, to family memories, religious holidays, the state or the country you're from. Instead, we wanted to give you a simple system, which is blood sugar levels from eating foods that spike your blood sugars will actually fuel a busy brain. So an example is white sugar, white flour, white bread. If you're eating this in the car while you're listening to this radio interview, don't panic. I'm not judging you. Our system says this: if you're going to choose a high glycemic food, a food that's going to spike your blood sugar, do not take caffeine 1 hour before or after this food, because the combination of the two spike the insulin levels in your brain, and they actually make inflammation, busy brain focus even worse. You pick one or the other. And guess what, Dan? I don't know about you, but if I had to pick a bagel, a donut, or a croissant, or my afternoon chai or coffee, I would take the caffeine. How about you? Most people on our program do. So we've put 1,000 executives through this protocol, and we found most people, we're not saying go low carb, no carb at all. We're just saying be careful of the things that spike your blood sugar. And they end up, once you restore the sleep, your stress eating calms down, sugar cravings go down. And it's really easy to say, I'll take coffee or tea without sugar in it, no problem. And people are feeling better. And by the end of the 8 weeks, belly bloating is going down. So you can feel that you've lost a dress or a pant size.
I want to come back to technology as well. You talked about avoiding technology before you want to go to sleep, but are there other things about technology we should be aware of?
Yeah. You know, when I first went to medical school in the 1990s and started my neurology and psychiatry training, Dan, adult onset attention deficit disorder was not a diagnosis. If you had it as an adult, it was because it carried through from childhood. What we know in the medical literature from the last 7 years is because we're in this hyper-connected digital world and it's been straining our attention span, and on top of that, we're under chronic stress and our brain's getting rewired, we now have a crisis of adult onset ADD, attention deficit disorder. ADHD in adults is a little less common. of adult onset. And this is due to all the digital devices that are around us. Think about it. If you're listening to this and you're going to binge watch something on Netflix tonight, you're probably not just sitting in front of the TV. You've got your iPad or phone in front of you and you're simultaneously doing work emails while binge watching. So that's a lot of technology that's fighting for your attention and the blue light. So we actually help you take and teach you in week 4 of the protocol how to take a brain pause during the day and calm the senses down in a busy brain, and then pick one item you're going to focus on and just do that one email. That's most important.
Well, Dr. Romie, there's much more in this book that we don't have time to talk about. So what would you say are a few key concepts that you hope that readers are going to take away?
2 things is you don't have to wear stress as a badge of honor or feel like you're alone in this world with burnout. Take the busy brain test. You can do it on our social media for free and get your score, and read the book. And in reading my stories and the stories of the people that had transformation, I hope that you will know you're not alone. I remembered what it felt like to walk the hospital corridors alone and not a single colleague asking me if I was okay. They didn't know what to say. And I felt so alone. So I hope in reading this book, you'll know you're not alone, and you can turn to chapter 10 if your score is above a 30, and we walk you through an easy to implement plan that you can do even with your team at work starting tonight without disrupting your personal or work life.
And how can people find that test on social media you referenced?
My name is Dr. Romie, Drromie. It is for free on my website, on our social media links on Instagram and on Twitter, now known as X. And if you buy a copy of the book, there is a QR code for you to scan, and you get to take the test right there for free.
Well, to learn more, the book is The Busy Brain Cure, the 8-week plan to find focus, tame anxiety, and sleep again, by Dr. Romie Mushtaq. Dr. Romie, thank you very much for talking with me today.
Dan, thank you. And I hope, as I say in the book, you'll take time to eat your favorite comfort food this week.
Now, if you'd like to purchase The Busy Brain Cure, I've placed a link for you in the description below. And if you'd like to see more videos about books and their authors on a wide variety of topics, be sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell to be notified about future programs. I'm Dan Skinner. Thank you for watching this edition of Some Books Considered.